Paint the picture of a packed courtroom in your mind.
Oh, yeah. Like the air is just completely thick.
Stifling,
Yeah.
right? Heavy with the sweat of hundreds of anxious onlookers. The entire city is just holding its breath.
Right.
And at the center of it all, a destitute beggar woman stands accused of murdering 2 armed soldiers in broad daylight.
Which is, I mean, that's just an incredibly tense scenario.
It really is. And the judge, the jury, the spectators, they're all waiting for her to plead for mercy or, at least offer some kind of defense.
Oh, she doesn't?
No, she doesn't want a defense at all. She looks at this entire colonial justice system dead in the eye, and she demands the death penalty.
It's chilling.
She states with this unbelievable calmness that her soul died 6 months ago when her honor was violently stolen from her.
Yeah.
And her body is just a ghost waiting to join it.
Yeah, it is a moment that completely shatters any illusion of order.
Absolutely.
It forces everyone in that room, and honestly, everyone reading the text, to confront the brutal realities of power, trauma, and justice.
Yeah.
And unpacking that exact confrontation and the sprawling web of lives connected to it is really our mission today.
Yes, it is. So welcome to another deep dive for the Simplified Summary YouTube channel.
We are so glad you're here with us.
If you want to keep exploring the most fascinating stories, historical summaries, and complex societal blueprints unpacked just for you, please humbly do us a favor.
Hit that subscribe button.
Exactly. Hit subscribe, like this video, and share your valuable comments down below. It truly, truly helps us bring these extensive deep dives to you.
It really does. So today we are dissecting Munshi Premchand's monumental work, Karmabhoomi.
Which is, wow, what a book.
Right, because it isn't just a narrative of colonial India, it operates as a highly sophisticated sociological blueprint.
Yeah, it maps out the anatomy of rebellion, basically.
Exactly. It examines how completely disparate individuals, like an idealistic student, a pampered heiress, a hyper-capitalist merchant, and an ambitious bureaucrat.
How they all respond when the structural violence of their society becomes impossible to ignore.
Yes. We are going to trace 2 parallel revolutions today, one rural, one urban.
And we're going to grapple with some profound questions about duty, complicity, and what it actually takes to dismantle an unjust system.
So let's jump in.
Right. Our entry point into this sprawling world is Queen's College in Kashi.
But, Premchand immediately strips away any romanticized idea of an academic sanctuary.
Right. He doesn't present it as a place of intellectual nourishment at all. It's a deeply, deeply transactional environment.
Yeah, the text contrasts the ideal of a shikshalaya, which means a temple of learning,
With the grim reality of a Germanalea.
which translates to a house of fines.
A house of fines. I mean, the atmosphere is completely suffocated by the clinking of coins.
Yeah.
And this constant threat of financial ruin.
The commodification of education here is staggering.
It really is.
The institution operates under this ruthless financial martial law. Fees are extracted with more aggression than state land taxes.
The teachers function less as educators and more as tax collectors.
Exactly. If a student is late, there's a fine. If the fee isn't paid by a strict deadline, it doubles. Or, the student just faces summary expulsion.
Boom, you're out.
Right. The text paints a picture of systemic extortion. It explicitly states that students are expected to procure the money by any means necessary.
Taking loans, pawning family jewelry.
Selling household plates, or even stealing, the institution just demands its capital without an ounce of mercy.
Which brings us to a really striking visual early on. A young man named Amarkant.
Right.
He's frail, he's carrying this profound sorrow, and he's hiding behind a tree on the campus, crying.
Crying over 40 rupees.
Exactly. He is facing immediate expulsion because he cannot produce this 40 rupee fee, which covers advance payments and examination costs.
But there is a massive irony here.
Oh, a profound irony. Amarkant belongs to an incredibly wealthy family.
Right.
His poverty is entirely manufactured. It's built by his own ideological rigidity.
And his ideological stance is so fascinating because it is entirely reactionary.
Yes, completely.
He is the son of Lala Samarkant, who is this hyper-industrious merchant who built a massive financial empire from nothing.
Samarkand embodies ruthless capitalism, but it's intertwined with this performative piety.
Yeah. He bathes in the Ganges before dawn, performs all his temple rituals.
And then spends the rest of his day relentlessly exploiting debtors and amassing wealth.
Right. And Amarkant is disgusted by this hypocrisy. Because the father worships capital, the son embraces asceticism.
He refuses to touch his father's money. He chooses to live in self-imposed destitution, taking up grueling clerical work just to maintain his independence.
It is a profound generational schism.
Yeah, Amarkant's daily commitment to spinning khadi, the yarn, it isn't just a political alignment.
No, it's a visceral, physical rejection of his father's capitalist empire.
When Samarkant mocks him, asking about the profit margin of his spinning, Amarkant declares it a process of self-purification.
He is trying to literally scrub the taint of hoarded wealth from his soul.
Right, but this self-righteousness, it really isolates him.
It does, and he is saved from expulsion not by his own principles, but by his friend Salim.
Salim is the best.
He is the complete antithesis of Amarkant. Salim is a wealthy, poetry-loving aesthete.
He routinely pays double fines just because he prefers a leisurely morning to a lecture.
Exactly. Salim finds Amarkant weeping and just casually pays the 40 rupees.
Like it's nothing.
Because for Salim, it is nothing. It's a minor inconvenience, just the cost of his lifestyle.
While for Amarkant, it's an existential threat.
Right. But they both recognize the corruption of their environment. They discuss how society has devolved into a series of shops.
Shops of justice in the courts, shops of health in the hospitals.
And shops of knowledge in the colleges. They are acutely aware that the university is basically a factory.
Designed to manufacture compliant administrators who will eventually oversee the extraction of wealth from the poor.
Exactly. Now, Amarkant's rebellion against this system and against his father, it bleeds directly into his marriage.
Oh, it creates a deeply toxic dynamic.
Very. He is married to Sukhada, a woman from a wealthy Lucknow family.
She is accustomed to luxury, deeply appreciative of the arts, and inherently practical.
The text describes them as two animals from completely different climates forced into the same cage.
That is such a good description. Because Sukhada watches her husband suffer humiliations over unpaid fees, right? And she sees him work himself to exhaustion for pennies.
So she offers a highly pragmatic solution.
Immense financial resources.
Right. She proposes funding a trip to England for a prestigious degree, utilizing her own inheritance and her mother's wealth.
From her perspective, this is an act of partnership.
Of course. She is offering him the tools to escape this localized misery and build a substantial life.
But his reaction is remarkably cold. He rejects the offer outright.
He declares that he would rather starve than survive on unearned wealth.
He frames this refusal around a strict moral philosophy. He argues that the enjoyment of luxury, even something as simple as going to the cinema, that it's a right reserved exclusively for those who have generated that wealth through their own physical labor.
By weaponizing this asceticism, Amarkant is essentially rejecting Sukhada's entire identity.
Yeah, he invalidates her existence. He makes her feel inherently guilty for her background, her clothes, her tastes.
He claims the moral high ground, viewing his poverty as a badge of honor, but he is completely blind to the emotional violence he is inflicting on his wife.
Well, totally blind. He demands her sympathy for his struggles while simultaneously demonstrating utter contempt for her solutions.
Which creates an impassable chasm between them.
Amarkant is defined entirely by what he is against. Against his father's greed, against the university's extortion, against his wife's luxury.
But he lacks a constructive purpose. He is a theoretician of poverty.
Yes.
He's intellectualizing the struggles of the poor without actually sharing their lived reality.
But that theoretical framework shatters when he finally steps out of the city and into the rural landscape.
Right. This transition from urban theory to rural reality is initiated by a fact-finding mission.
Amarkant, Salim, and their university professor, Dr. Shantikumar, traveled to the surrounding villages to study the economic conditions.
As city intellectuals, they're prepared for abstract poverty.
Sure, they expect to see struggling but functioning agricultural communities.
Instead, they encounter absolute crushing destitution.
They find homes entirely devoid of grain.
Inhabited by farmers who are systematically drained of their resources by a predatory hierarchy of landlords and state officials.
It's heartbreaking, and the brutality of the system shifts from economic to physical in a terrifying instant.
Yeah, this scene is intense.
While walking near the fields, the group witnesses 3 British soldiers harassing a local woman.
Dr. Shantikumar, operating under the assumption that his academic status and sheer moral authority offers some protection.
Because he's a professor.
Right, he intervenes.
And the response is immediate and violent.
One of the soldiers draws a revolver and shoots the professor in the leg.
That gunshot completely obliterates the illusion of a civilized society governed by the rule of law.
It demonstrates the absolute impunity of colonial forces.
The soldiers operate with the understanding that the bodies of the colonized, particularly the women, are theirs for the taking.
However, the students and the local villagers react with unexpected ferocity.
Yeah, emboldened by the professor's intervention, they physically assault the soldiers. They beat them back with sticks.
And amidst the chaos of this violent clash, the woman who is targeted slips away into the fields.
The text really captures her profound psychological trauma here. She is consumed by shame.
Feeling that her honor, which her society has conditioned her to view as her most vital possession,
Has been irrevocably tainted.
right. She vanishes. She chooses the anonymity of the wilderness over the societal judgment she knows awaits her.
The aftermath of this encounter highlights the divergent psychological trajectories of the characters.
Salim returns to the city and frames the event as a grand, heroic adventure.
Totally missing the systemic implications.
Completely. Amarkant, conversely, is deeply disturbed. He begins to analyze the mechanics of the terror he just witnessed.
He understands that the soldiers' actions were not an aberration. They were the logical endpoint of a colonial structure built entirely on subjugation and fear.
Which brings us full circle to our opening hook.
Yes. Months after the incident in the fields, the city is thrown into absolute chaos when 2 soldiers are stabbed to death at a local shop.
The assassin is apprehended, and it is revealed to be Muni, the woman from the village.
She tracked down the men who assaulted her and exacted her own brutal justice.
And her stance during the trial is a profound indictment of the state apparatus.
By refusing to defend herself, by admitting to the crime and demanding the death penalty, Muni rejects the legitimacy of the court.
She articulates a devastating truth.
Yeah.
The system that is currently judging her for murder was entirely complicit in the theft of her honor.
She views herself as already dead, just a wandering ghost executing a necessary vengeance before seeking final release from a world that offered her absolutely no protection.
Muni's testimony acts as a catalyst for the entire city. But the most spectacular transformation occurs within Sukhada.
Sukhada. The woman who previously concerned herself with luxury and societal standing is suddenly galvanized.
It's a fascinating contrast. Amarkant's response to the trial is characteristically bureaucratic.
Oh yeah. He consults lawyers, organizes committee meetings,
Attempts to formulate a measured, legalistic defense.
but Sukhada bypasses this entirely. She taps directly into raw collective outrage.
Sukhada brilliantly frames Muni's plight within the broader context of colonial hypocrisy.
She publicly articulates the stark racial double standards.
Right. She points out that if the racial dynamics were reversed, if a European woman had been assaulted by local men,
The state would deploy the military to raise entire provinces without a second thought regarding individual guilt.
exactly. But because the victim is an Indian woman, she is abandoned, forced to secure her own retribution.
Sukhada elevates Muni from a murderer to a symbol of righteous resistance, an idol for all women suffering under patriarchal and colonial dominion.
Sukhada's mobilization is a masterclass in direct action.
She approaches her wealthy mother, Renuka Devi, and secures vast sums for a public defense fund.
She organizes massive daily rallies.
The city's population turns out in unprecedented numbers, showering the police van, transporting Muni with flowers.
This sheer, overwhelming public pressure forces the judicial machinery to bend.
The jury, faced with a unified and volatile populace, acquits her.
Even the judge, facing intense pressure from his own wife, who has joined Sukhada's movement, is compelled to release Muni.
The acquittal is a monumental victory for collective action.
It proves that a mobilized citizenry can overpower a rigidly codified legal system.
But for Amarkant, this victory is deeply alienating.
Think about it. He has spent years theorizing about societal change and weaponizing his asceticism to claim moral superiority.
Yet it is his supposedly frivolous wife who actually orchestrates a mass movement and secures a tangible victory in a matter of weeks.
His intellectual framework is rendered entirely impotent in the face of her visceral, effective leadership.
Feeling emasculated and intellectually adrift, Amarkant seeks solace outside of his marriage and his familiar social circles.
He becomes deeply entangled in a romantic relationship with Sakina,
who is the granddaughter of Pathanan, an elderly and fiercely loyal Muslim servant of his father.
The sociological implications of this relationship are explosive.
Huge.
Amarkant represents the apex of the social hierarchy, a wealthy, upper caste Hindu male.
Sakina represents the margins, a poor, working-class Muslim female.
In the highly stratified, communally sensitive environment of colonial India, their union is not just a scandal.
It is a direct assault on the foundational boundaries of their society.
And Amarkant leans into this taboo with the zeal of a martyr.
He informs Salim that he is fully prepared to withstand the societal backlash, to abandon his university education, and to formally marry Sakina.
He articulates a passionate, albeit somewhat naive, defense of their love,
arguing that religious and caste boundaries are artificial constructs designed to divide humanity, and the genuine affection supersedes these dogmas.
Salim, operating with his characteristic pragmatism, attempts to ground Amarkant.
He points out the vast difference between engaging in intellectual debates about social reform in a university dormitory and actually living as a social pariah.
He warns Amarkant that acting on these impulses will make him an enemy of his own community.
However, Amarkant views the potential marriage not just as an act of love, but as the ultimate rebellion.
It is his final, most destructive weapon against his father's orthodox hypocrisy and his own failed marriage.
But the pressure from the community quickly reaches a boiling point.
Samarkant discovers the affair.
And he attempts to resolve it using his primary tool. Capital. He offers substantial sums of money to arrange Sakina's marriage to someone else.
Attempting to literally buy his son's reputation back.
The public gossip becomes unbearable, and Amarkant is forced to confront a harsh reality.
He realizes he cannot subject Sakina to the immense, crushing weight of this social war.
He sees that his rebellion is entirely self-centered, and to proceed would be to destroy her life for the sake of his ideology.
This realization triggers a profound abdication.
Amarkant does not compromise or negotiate. He simply severs all ties.
He abandons his immense inheritance, walks away from his unresolved marriage with Sukhada, leaves Sakina behind, and physically removes himself from the urban environment.
He wanders into the rural expanse, seeking an environment where his theories of service and poverty can be actualized without the complications of his personal history.
His wanderings lead him to a village called Sukhada,
where he makes a highly deliberate choice regarding his living arrangements.
He does not seek out the local elites or even the prominent farmers.
He integrates himself entirely into the Radas community, the untouchables of the village.
By living alongside individuals like the elder Gudar Chaudhary and the fiercely outspoken Saloni, Amarkant completely sheds his caste privilege.
And in a remarkable twist of fate, he discovers that Muni,
the woman whose trial catalyzed the city.
Yes, she has also sought refuge in this exact community.
This rural relocation marks the maturation of Amarkant's ideology.
He transitions from a passive observer of poverty to an active organizer.
He establishes a rudimentary school, but his curriculum extends far beyond basic literacy.
He instructs the villagers in global history, hygiene, and fundamental human rights.
He is providing a deeply insular, oppressed community with a broader context for their suffering, showing them the historical precedents for challenging authority.
And the authority in Sauta is formidable.
The local power structure is entirely dominated by the Mahant,
a figure who amalgamates religious authority with merciless landlordism.
The Mahant exacts exorbitant taxes and enforces a brutal system of Begar,
which is compulsory unpaid labor. Whenever the Mahant requires work, whether for agricultural harvesting or a personal celebration, the villagers are conscripted without compensation.
Premchand uses this dynamic to dissect the intricate psychology of the agrarian crisis.
The text details a population that starves for 360 days of the year, drowning in generational debt and steadily losing their livestock.
Yet they remain paralyzed by a deeply ingrained, almost pathological pride in their identity as farmers.
They endure unimaginable exploitation because they desperately cling to the societal distinction that separates them from mere laborers.
This false pride is the very mechanism that sustains their subjugation.
It's a trap. And Amarkant systematically dismantles this psychological trap.
He challenges their hierarchy of dignity, arguing that it is far more honorable to work as a day laborer and demand fair wages than to cling to the title of a farmer while being treated as an indentured servant.
He gives them the vocabulary to articulate their exploitation.
He also targets their coping mechanisms, strongly advocating against alcohol consumption.
He frames the expenditure of their meager resources on liquor, while their children suffer from malnutrition, not just as a personal failing, but as a severe crime against their own community.
Through these targeted interventions, Amarkant builds the infrastructure for a micro-revolution.
He transforms their internalized despair into collective action.
He organizes a unified boycott of the Begar system.
When the Mahant's enforcers arrived to demand their customary unpaid labor, the villagers, fortified by Amarkant's leadership and their newfound solidarity, outright refuse.
Amarkant ceases to be a theoretical ascetic. He becomes the tactical architect of a peasant revolt against an ancient, entrenched feudal system.
While Amarkant is igniting the rural landscape, the urban environment he left behind is also moving toward critical mass.
The city's municipal board, operating under the guise of civic improvement, initiates a devastating project of urban gentrification.
They identify a sprawling, densely populated slum area and decide it is the perfect location for a new development of luxury bungalows intended for the city's wealthy elite.
The mechanism of displacement here is universally recognizable.
The municipality cites the horrific, unsanitary conditions of the slums as justification for the demolition.
Yet their objective is not to improve the living conditions of the inhabitants, but to eradicate them entirely from the valuable land.
They offered an insultingly low sum in compensation, fully aware that the displaced population has absolutely nowhere to go.
It is a stark demonstration of a civic body prioritizing aesthetic luxury for the wealthy over the basic survival of the poor.
This impending catastrophe becomes the crucible for Sukhada's leadership.
The pampered heiress is completely gone, replaced by an absolute force of nature.
She recognizes that the poor, while financially destitute, possess the ultimate leverage.
Their labor?
Their labor. She organizes a massive hurdle, a coordinated citywide strike.
She stands before thousands of displaced and desperate laborers and delivers a speech that completely reconfigures their understanding of their own power.
Her rhetoric is precise and devastating. She doesn't appeal to their morality. She appeals to their structural importance.
She forces them to examine the daily operations of the city. She asks who constructs the mansions, who operates the industrial mills, who delivers the daily necessities.
She makes them realize that the entire apparatus of urban wealth is entirely dependent on their unseen, unappreciated physical exertion.
They are the essential machinery of the city.
And the wealthy elite are merely the beneficiaries of their constant motion.
Sukhada exposes the brutal quantitative logic of the municipal board.
She explicitly points out that the municipality has calculated the value of the land at 10 lakh rupees.
And has decided that this potential profit outweighs the lives and stability of 10,000 human beings.
She brilliantly recontextualizes the proposed luxury bungalows, refusing to let them be seen as symbols of progress.
Instead, she labels them blisters on the body of the city.
Blisters. Visible manifestations of a deep systemic disease of inequality.
She issues a clear directive. Withdraw the labor and the entire structure of elite society will collapse into paralysis.
The visual of this mobilization is incredibly powerful.
Naina, Amarkant's sister, who has historically been depicted as shy and retiring, steps into the forefront,
leading massive processions.
She anchors the movement with a unifying anthem, repeating the refrain, Hum bi manav tandari hen,
asserting their fundamental humanity in a system that views them merely as disposable resources.
The collective roar of thousands of laborers creates a seismic shift in the city's power dynamics, genuinely terrifying the municipal authorities.
Premchand's architectural genius is fully apparent here. He is orchestrating two distinct, yet ideologically identical revolutions simultaneously.
In the rural dust of Sukhada, Amarkant is leading the untouchables and the tenant farmers against the feudal exploitation of the Mahant.
In the concrete labyrinth of the city, Sukhada is commanding an army of laborers against the capitalist exploitation of the municipal board.
Both movements are challenging a fundamental societal disease:
the absolute prioritization of property, profit, and inherited power over human dignity and survival.
Now, the state apparatus, facing a synchronized assault on both its urban and rural fronts, responds with the only tool it inherently trusts:
overwhelming force.
The government abandons any pretense of negotiation and initiates a massive wave of arrests.
Sukhada, the architect of the strike, is imprisoned.
Dr. Shanti Kumar, the academic who legitimized the movement, is jailed.
Renuka Devi, whose wealth funded the initial legal battles and the current strikes, is incarcerated.
But the most astonishing arrest is that of Lala Samarkant.
Yes. We have to examine the psychological journey of this man.
He began as the embodiment of ruthless accumulation.
A merchant who viewed every human interaction as a potential transaction. A father whose greed drove his son into exile.
How does a man like that end up willingly going to jail for a labor strike?
It is an extraordinary portrait of psychological collapse and moral reconstruction.
Samarkant witnesses his entire family, his son, his daughter-in-law, sacrificing their comfort, their freedom, and their reputations for a cause entirely divorced from personal gain.
This collective sacrifice acts as a mirror, forcing him to confront the utter emptiness of his own existence.
He realizes that he has spent decades constructing an empire of gold, utilizing exploitation and cruelty, only to find himself spiritually desolate and completely isolated from the people he loves.
And his transformation is deeply public. He doesn't just quietly change his mind.
He stands before the massive crowds of striking laborers and delivers a profound confession.
He publicly acknowledges his past sins, detailing how he exploited their vulnerability to amass his fortune.
He declares his hoarded wealth a spiritual poison and formally pledges his entire financial empire to the movement.
When the police arrive to arrest the leadership, Samarkant does not resist.
He welcomes the incarceration, viewing it as a necessary penance for a lifetime of systemic cruelty.
With the primary leadership of the urban movement secured behind bars, the narrative tension tightens around the rural uprising in Sukhada.
Bringing us to a devastating collision of past loyalties and present duties.
We must reintroduce Salim into the architecture of the conflict.
While Amarkant was radicalizing the peasantry and Sukhada was paralyzing the city, Salim was diligently ascending the ladder of colonial power.
Salim has successfully navigated the grueling examinations for the ICS, joining the elite ranks of the administrative bureaucracy.
He is no longer the poetry-quoting university student. He has been forged into a magistrate, an instrument of state authority.
And in an act of profound, almost cruel narrative irony, the government deploys Magistrate Salim to the precise district where Amarkant is orchestrating the tax and labor revolt against the Mahant.
The man who once casually paid Amarkant's university fine to save him from expulsion is now tasked with dismantling Amarkant's revolution by force, if necessary.
Salim initially approaches the situation with a naive belief that his personal morality can subvert the institutional mandate.
He genuinely believes he can resolve the crisis through diplomacy and friendship.
Salim initiates a deeply philosophical confrontation with Amarkant. He argues from the perspective of a pragmatic state official.
He expresses sympathy for the severe hardships of the farmers, but insists that the maintenance of law and order is paramount.
He argues that the government requires tax revenue to function, and a coordinated refusal to pay threatens the stability of the entire region.
He urges Amarkant to cease the agitation, promising to file comprehensive reports and navigate the grievances through the proper bureaucratic channels.
Amarkant entirely rejects this legalistic framework.
He challenges the fundamental morality of Salim's position, stating unequivocally that a system that extracts taxes from a population currently enduring starvation is not just flawed, but inherently evil.
Amarkant forces Salim to confront his complicity, asking how he can justify a salary derived from the extreme suffering of people who lack basic clothing and sustenance.
Amarkant argues that human duty, the imperative to protect the vulnerable, must always supersede bureaucratic duty to an oppressive state.
This debate is the ideological core of the narrative.
Salim represents the alluring but dangerous illusion that an individual can change a corrupt system from within.
That the presence of a good person in a position of power alters the nature of the power itself.
Amarkant represents the realization that an unjust system is impervious to internal reform.
Its primary directive is always self-preservation, and it will inevitably force the good person to execute its violence.
And Amarkant's assessment is immediately proven correct.
The villagers, maintaining their unified front, refuse to pay the exorbitant taxes.
Salim, trapped within the rigid parameters of his office and his direct orders from the colonial hierarchy, is compelled to act.
The state does not permit negotiation with rebellion.
Salim is forced to authorize a brutal police crackdown on the village.
The violence is intimate and devastating. The state forces descend upon the villagers, employing severe physical coercion.
Saloni, the fiery elder who had embraced Amarkant as a surrogate son, is subjected to a brutal beating, left bleeding in the dust.
Amarkant, the architect of the resistance, is apprehended.
In a desperate attempt to salvage his conscience, Salim attempts to leverage his authority to grant Amarkant special privileges within the prison system,
offering him a higher-class cell, commensurate with his social background.
Amarkant categorically refuses the concession.
He demands to be placed in a third-class cell, insisting on enduring the exact same deprivations and indignities inflicted upon the poorest farmers he organized.
He entirely rejects the insulation of privilege that Salim represents.
The psychological toll on Salim is immense. He operates under the delusion that his benign intentions soften the impact of his authority.
The brutal reality demonstrates that the machinery of the state possesses only one function:
the maintenance of control through violence.
The state is entirely indifferent to his poetry, his empathy, or his history with Amarkant.
It merely requires his authorization to deploy force, turning him into the very instrument of oppression he once criticized in his university days.
Salim's psychological collapse accelerates when Samarkant, now a revolutionary figure himself, confronts the young magistrate.
The former capitalist titan delivers a scathing indictment.
He challenges the purpose of Salim's elite education, asking if the ultimate goal of his rigorous study was merely to acquire the authority to beat elderly women and ensure the continued starvation of children.
It is a stunning reversal of generational roles.
The older man, who spent his life embodying compliance and extraction, is now fiercely rebuking the younger man for surrendering his soul to the colonial apparatus.
The verbal confrontation escalates into physical chaos when Saloni, bearing the visible wounds of the police crackdown, lunges at Salim, condemning him as a tyrant.
This visceral confrontation breaks Salim.
The young magistrate is overwhelmed by the undeniable reality of his actions.
He weeps, realizing the horrific extent to which he has been compromised by the institution he serves.
He publicly apologizes to the villagers and to Saloni,
acknowledging the profound truth of Amarkant's argument.
One cannot function as an agent of state oppression and simultaneously claim to be an ally of the oppressed.
The uniform dictates the action, regardless of the heart beating beneath it.
This revelation forces a dramatic shift in the narrative's trajectory.
Salim, placing his entire career and personal freedom in jeopardy, shifts from enforcing the state's will to advocating for a resolution.
A government, simultaneously analyzing the situation, recognizes a severe strategic vulnerability.
They are facing a deeply unified resistance on two fronts.
The prisons are at absolute capacity. While the central figures, Mahant, Sukhada, Samarkant, and Shantakumar, are incarcerated, their respective movements are not dissipating.
They are gaining momentum and public sympathy.
The state realizes that it cannot simply arrest its way out of a systemic crisis.
The strategy of decapitating the leadership has failed because the grievances are structural, not merely individual.
Consequently, the fragmented family is ironically reunited within the confines of the prison system, having finally achieved a unified purpose behind bars.
The authorities, recognizing the impasse, propose a compromise.
The government agrees to establish a comprehensive committee tasked with deeply investigating the core demands of both factions.
This committee will evaluate the agrarian tax structures and the Begar system in the rural districts, as well as the gentrification policies, housing rights, and labor conditions in the urban centers.
Amarkant is inherently cynical regarding this development.
He is acutely aware that government committees are frequently utilized as bureaucratic mechanisms to diffuse momentum, exhaust the leadership, and ultimately maintain the status quo.
The difference here is Salim.
The magistrate places his personal honor and his remaining institutional leverage on the line.
He guarantees that the committee's findings will be treated as binding mandates, and he commits to fighting the bureaucratic battles from within the apparatus.
The narrative concludes not with a utopian triumph, but with a tense, highly contingent negotiation.
The structural violence has not been entirely eradicated, but the absolute power of the colonial and feudal systems has been fractured.
They have forced the governing behemoth to recognize their humanity and negotiate terms.
Premchand demonstrates that while political struggle demands excruciating sacrifices, shatters families, and forces individuals to the very limits of their endurance,
organized, unyielding collective action is the only mechanism capable of bending the trajectory of power.
Premchand's genius lies in his refusal to provide simplistic resolutions.
The conclusion requires you, the listener, to grapple with a deeply complex reality.
The oppressive systems were not dismantled because those in power experienced a sudden moral awakening.
They were forced to the negotiating table because the cost of maintaining the oppression became unsustainable in the face of absolute unified resistance.
Which leaves us with a profound, lingering consideration.
We watched Salim, an inherently decent and empathetic individual, assume a position of immense power.
Yet his presence did not reform the institution. The institution forced him to authorize brutality.
If a system is architecturally designed to extract wealth and crush dissent, it fundamentally does not matter who is occupying the office or pulling the levers.
The machinery operates as intended.
This challenges us to critically examine our own societies. Can genuine equity ever be achieved simply by electing or appointing better individuals to oversee a flawed system?
Or does the fundamental architecture, the very way we prioritize capital over human life, need to be entirely dismantled and rebuilt?
It is a terrifying and necessary question, one that Premchand posed decades ago, and one that remains urgently applicable to the structural inequalities we navigate today.
What an incredible, exhaustive journey through the complex architecture of Karmabhoomi. If this deep dive expanded your understanding of systemic power and resistance, make sure you are subscribed to the Simplified Summary YouTube channel.
Drop a like to support these extensive analyses.
And head to the comments to let us know your thoughts. Who do you believe wielded more effective power? Amarkant through his rural mobilization, or Sukhada through her urban paralysis?
We read and appreciate every single comment.
Thanks for spending your time with us, and we will see you in the next deep dive.